Cool. All right. So I have YouTube getting up and rolling. So funny thing is I YouTube Live saved my life not too long ago because I forgot to hit the record button on Zoom. And so I had this whole entire um, awesome episode that was just about to be wasted. And thank heavens it was on, we got it on YouTube Live. So, whew, that was a big lifesaver.
Wow. Bryan, just real quick. So I did unmute here because this is the first time that I'm actually doing it with this specific setup. I did unmute in, at the bottom left, right?
Yes, so I'm showing your
Okay.
microphone is, so I'm seeing that reflect. And you can hear me okay. Actually, let's test this out.
I can hear you okay through Clubhouse.
Okay, microphone Yeti is good. All right, so we should be good to go here. Okay, so I'll hit the record button. So we are recording. And all right, cool. So today, I want to make sure that I have this pronounced right. I forgot to go back and look at the 8 times that you did this on LinkedIn. But it's Zineb Leachi. Is that right? Leachi?
Yeah. That's perfect.
Leachi. All right, perfecto. So we are going to be hyper growth banter about this idea of a one funnel marketing approach here. So it should be pretty interesting. I was doing some prep work on here, and there's just so much complexity that we can bring to this. So I'm really excited about this, Ine, because you and your group are putting together this pitch slap, which is hysterical. I love that line, right? And there's so much out there about, the harmony between sales and marketing. And my sense is that's completely broken. It's not a harmony or an alignment. It's really one team of this built of specialists. So that's kind of the topic of today. So with that said, welcome. And let me give the floor to you. I mean, some opening thoughts for you whenever you were thinking about marketing and having a one funnel approach. One, am I completely crazy? Or two, are you in alignment with that?
Yeah, happy to be here, Bryan. So I'll start by saying that, at least I don't think you're completely crazy, right? No, I completely agree with that. I'll also say that it depends on the size of the company. So I really think that when you get too big, there's no turning back. Probably it's really hard to turn back, but it's something that if people like you, people like me, just keep talking about these things, and startups adopt this approach when really early, when they're still more flexible, more nimble, it could really help. Definitely.
That's really interesting. I hadn't considered the size aspect of it. Whenever I was putting this together, I had the size of whenever you're looking at your target. I think a lot of people mess up whenever they don't look at the size of that company that they're going after. And so a title is a title is a title, as opposed to looking at the company size and then assigning the title or job function off of that. But I wasn't thinking about it from us as the practitioner, the one using this one funnel approach. So help me understand that. You said you can get to a size where you're too big. When do you get too big, or how do you separate that out? So that's I hate that thought, but tell me more.
Yeah. I mean, it's just from my experience. I've spent a couple of years in corporates, and I know that once companies are of a certain size, and here I am talking about the actual company that is applying this one funnel, or would like to change the approach to the one funnel. It's just that you're not as nimble as you are when you first start. So it's much harder to make these sort of changes. It's much harder to change, sales has been doing it for years. Marketing has been doing it like that for years. How long is that going to take to change that approach? And is it going to come at a detriment to, the rest of the operations? That's a question I'm asking myself. Yeah.
So interesting. Okay, so it's not that they can't do it, it's that it's going to maybe take them a little bit longer to do that. Yeah, you're 100% correct
Mm,
because you're going to talk about
mm.
change management, there's territory, there's budgets and everything else. So why don't we maybe define can I let me get your definition of this one funnel approach and you're bringing this from a marketing perspective and then I'm really coming at this from a sales perspective. And so let's go from a marketing perspective. Define how you see this one marketing funnel working.
How do I see this working? So, I mean, it's much easier said than done, right? But
Right.
if we start at, okay, there's a business, right? We work at a business, or it's our business, but there's a business, right? So we have a goal, which is to generate revenue, profit, right? And to be able to do it in a predictable manner. Also, an aspect that we don't pay enough attention to, which is the predictability. To be able to say, okay, turn on and off, right? Certain tactics. So we start there. If you and I are not aligned, and we don't share that common goal, we're obviously going to go in different directions, right? So it's just this idea of, and it might look different for certain companies, and it might look like something else for other companies. So maybe there isn't a one size fits all, right? That'll come out of this session.
Yeah.
But at least if we're not aligned towards a common goal, there's a lot of inefficacies, definitely, and then friction between the two of us, right? Not personally, Bryan. Nothing
Right,
personal.
exactly. But here's a curious thing, right? So I can hear the other person. Well, we are aligned. Marketing and sales is both trying to drive revenue. So why is it that we think that there are these two funnels? And can you maybe go up a little bit higher level? What would you say a marketing funnel looks like?
Typically,
Typically, yes.
yeah. So we're going to talk about the typical, marketing qualified leads, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Which they're not bad, at all. It's just that there's a lot of talk about that they're bad. It's just that what's the meaning that you actually give those marketing qualified leads. So marketing puts qualified opportunities into the funnel that sales can follow through with, right? That's one.
That's the idea, right?
Supposedly, that's the idea, right? So that's where one of the problems arises, is that the whole qualified is not necessarily what they're putting through in general, right? Which leads to a lot of friction with sales. Now, sales, marketing has a lot to say about sales too, right? I'm sure we'll get into that. But it's the idea of qualified, like how, and I hate to use this example, but it's the typical example that, it makes it really easy to understand, is, the typical ebook, right?
Yeah.
So marketing, spends, months working on a beautiful ebook, right? Gets these emails and treats them all equally. Well, maybe I just downloaded the ebook because, first of all, maybe I was a competitor doing, just benchmark research. Maybe I was a designer. Right. No, we never do that. Maybe I'm a designer or a copywriter looking for, inspiration from the sector. And then the rest is, I think we touched up on this topic the last time we spoke, Bryan. The rest might be leads, so correct ICP,
Yeah.
but they're not ready. So we can't treat them all the same.
Well, it's kind of curious then, because one thing that I didn't mark on here is it gets into really a leadership style then as well. Because if I am a leader, whether in sales or marketing, we have this one group that we're working with, and every single lead that comes through is, oh, this is a hot one, right? And that's couldn't be any further from the case. It's not necessarily that the lead is hot. They just downloaded a white paper. They did something along those lines. It's not necessarily a hot lead. So we if that has to come from a leadership perspective. And one of the things that I marked down was that SLA, but I didn't think of it originally whenever I was prepping this as part of that change management really has to come from the top at that leadership level where they align this. So, can I give you my definition of how I look at what I would call a traditional marketing funnel?
Sure, please.
And you can tell me if this is wrong or not. But the way that I look at it is a traditional marketing funnel, and I'm looking up here at my picture that I have, is really identifying that ideal customer profile, the job functions, the personas, right? And usually that's going to fall within marketing. And I don't think, my personal opinion is, I don't think that they pull in sales or sales is willing enough to participate in that. So already we're starting in a misalignment because you look at the total available market, total addressable market, who's the target that we're going after, and marketing is doing all of this, but then they're not really communicating with sales, and sales isn't volunteering the market feedback and the market studies that they're finding through all of these communications. So I think that's the first part of the marketing funnel, is that ICP, job functions, that list size and quantity, excuse me. So is that kind of the first level that you're seeing as well?
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about, when you're talking about ICP, you're talking about people, right? So that's the first, that's supposed to be the first one, people and their problems, and the value that we're bringing to them. So
Yeah,
that's definitely the first step. I do see a couple of issues there, but maybe we'll get into them.
yeah. Let's
Um,
let's dive down on them right
hmm,
now.
yeah. So you talked about marketing not pulling enough from sales, and probably sales not pulling enough from marketing. So
Or
I
not
see I
stepping up
see.
to that level, right? Not even stepping
Yeah.
up to help at that point.
Mhm. Yeah. So in terms of knowledge, when it comes to knowledge of the customer, right? The customer knowledge, I think it should be shared equally, right? And it's not. Today we have, sales is the closest one to the customer, right?
Right.
And marketing is not. That needs to change, right? That definitely needs to change. I'm seeing a lot of a lot of marketers talk more in that direction, and I'm really happy, because that really needs to change. I made that mistake too, of being so far away from the customer, and not having said, put my foot down and said, okay, this has got to change, right? Because I got into an organization that was already like that. So first of all, there's not a shared knowledge in terms of current knowledge. But how many times does marketing get into an organization and say, okay, I'm going to spend the first 60 days, 30, 45 days just interviewing customers, I might feel like a cost center. That's fine, but hey, but that is what it is. Because if not, the knowledge about the customer, you put so much pressure on sales, when we all know that sales is a great source, but the customer probably is not telling sales, the salespeople everything, because they've got that familiarity bias, right? So
Right.
right, so there's gold that we're not extracting, and it is the role of marketing to extract all that too. So go through the same process a salesperson would do that yourself. Learn about the whole, whatever your funnel is, go through it yourself.
Yeah, and I would think at the very top of this, whenever we're looking at the very top of it, you would really look at, okay, so if I'm looking at that target for the marketing and sales to get this together, that ideal customer profile, that targeting, and you and I were going back and forth on LinkedIn on this, on that April Dunford with the obviously awesome. I never realized how important that positioning was, and she really defines that positioning as identifying the alternatives that the person has today. And I think sales can really help with that, because that would be really the objections that they're getting on their outreach, right? So what are the alternatives today? What's the pushback? Whether it's the intern, whether it's the competitor, whether it's the apathy, the status quo, whatever the case may be, really identifying all of those alternatives. And I think this becomes a brainstorming session then with sales and marketing on all the problems that there are with going with one of those alternatives. So the teams identifying those alternatives, bringing out the problems with all of that the alternatives bring, and then discussing how our solution solves all of these alternative problems. And so that kind of gets to the message, or excuse me, positioning, and out of that, the messaging will come. And then we have to align, my sense is that messaging would then have to align with their why from that ideal customer profile based on job functions, titles, and titles within company size. So that's the way I look at that very top of the funnel, that ICP, job functions, persona, building of the list off of that. Is that kind of a good summary?
Yeah, it is. I mean, there's so many things in what you just said. I mean, first of all, I just want to say that, April Dunford is one of my marketing heroes. I absolutely love, anything she puts out. And I think you'll be having her soon, right? So
Yes. We just
it's
recorded that last week. It was awesome. She's amazing.
awesome. I can't wait. I can't wait. The idea of the alternatives. I think that I'm also a startup mentor for, much earlier stages than, my consultancy, than the companies I work with in my consultancy. But I try to drill down that idea because I think it's a game changer, not to just look at your competitors, right? So competitors are good. It's good to know that they're there, what they're offering, etc. What, especially what the people that you're talking to, what they like, what they dislike, right? And then ultimately why they chose you versus anything else. But the competitive alternatives are key, because you could really your messaging or your positioning could just flop if you don't take that into consideration and you only think of competitors, right? April Dunford talks a lot about email, right? Generally email. So I think that when Slack came out, email was the main competitive alternative, right? Not any other chat out there, right?
Well, and then I didn't realize this, how insanely important this was, but that positioning really goes to target, because in the old days, right? So I'm dating myself a little bit here, Zine, but in the old days, you just were given a list. Go get them, killer, right? That was what we were told to do in sales. And I thought marketing was doing their job whenever they actually handed me a list, for goodness sakes, because we had to go out and source our own list. And this was pre-Zoom info. This is pre being able to go out there on Seamless or leveraging a service like we have whenever you can actually get human validated leads. We just got a list from wherever. I mean, half the people were dead, gone, or whatever, and it was just a colossal waste of time. And so I didn't really consider positioning or that targeting or positioning. I was just looking for whomever I could have a conversation with. Do you see that changing now, or have you seen that change over time? Meaning, like, just call anyone in the old days, or just versus being very targeted?
Well, I mean, one of the biggest challenges in marketing and in sales, just think of, the whether it's sales cadences or, any specific email that you're sending out. If you're talking to everyone at the same time, it's really hard to get through, right? So one of the main challenges in marketing is, honing that message to make it resonate with the other person on the other side, right? In their inbox, to make them open it and then read it and then do, whatever it is that we want them to do, right?
Yes.
So that ties into the, just talking to anyone, not knowing exactly, not knowing that much about them. That's where it gets a bit more difficult. Now, if you tell me, I'm handing you a list, right, of contacts, and I'm telling you this list is, with some sort of an explanation behind that list, or these are, super hot. These are, they've already done this, and that, and these are super hot. Then your message is going to be straightforward. You're not going to have to think twice about, what to actually, or maybe you will think twice, but it won't be such a hassle to think about, how am I going to approach them? I don't know if that actually made sense.
Well, it does, because it goes to relevance, right? Relevance versus customization, at least at the very top, is the way I'm looking at it, because you have to do, unfortunately, one part quality, one part quantity. And I think at the very top of the funnel, they haven't really, and you can push back on me, I'm throwing this out here for debate. at the very top of the funnel, we're looking for quantity because we really have to address as many people. So we're looking at that relevance as opposed to that customization. And then as we take them down through the tier, through that whole entire one funnel approach, that's where we're going to get more customization, more specifics that we're going to bring to the table to them. Is that how you're seeing it, or am I still way up too high?
Well, I mean, that definitely could be possible. Like we said, is there isn't a one size fits all, but that's where I'd like to introduce, the whole idea of, call it inbound, call it demand generation, whatever it is that you want to call it, which is, they come to you, right?
Yeah.
There's a part of your activity that you do that, when they are ready, and we did talk about, readiness to buy, not everyone's ready to buy, they do come to you. So that's a whole different funnel. But
well,
go ahead.
No, that's curious, because whether it's inbound or outbound demand generation, or outbound, outbound demand generation or inbound lead conversion, that's the next layer down that I'm looking at. Is really leads in progress. So it doesn't matter to me how they get to this point, because it still goes into, I have to have a conversation with them. So those leads in progress are going to really fall into a couple of different, I guess, pathways, but still within that same funnel. That leads in progress, one might be nurturing to get them to have a conversation. One might be tiering and a validation of it. One might be outbound demand generation to get that person into a first time ever appointment, right? First time FEA, call it, right? That first time ever appointment. And then from there, it's going to either go to pipeline or back into nurturing. So there's all these different pathways that go off of this, but it's going to be both a combination of marketing and sales, and bringing in automation and enablement tools there, where we both have to play together to bring this one funnel approach, is my sense. But I'm not sure if you would agree with that or not.
Well, let me just ask you a question then, just to clarify. In what you just explained, are you, in this example, are we teaching them, making it as easy as possible for them to buy at the very top, ungated 100%? So just to know if the people that come already know what they want, and they know that they want it.
Well, that's a good point, right? So ungated content, yes. I'm very much an advocate of ungated content. So Chris Walker, I really enjoy his stuff as well, where it's that ungated content. And because my sense is, in the old days, content, your information, knowledge was power in the old days, but now knowledge is ubiquitous. I can go anywhere. I can get training on LinkedIn. I can go to YouTube. Knowledge is ubiquitous. The application and the help along the pathway, that's, I think, what people are really looking for. So to your question, are we looking for this to be as easy for them to buy as possible? Absolutely. I want to find out all those friction points, and that's what I'm really trying to figure out here, is how do we bring into one team the sales and marketing, so we can absolutely get out all of that friction along the way. So I haven't quite figured that out yet. That's why we're having this hyper banter conversation, right? So I don't know if you have, but that's kind of where my mind is eliminating all of that friction as much as possible. And there's a gentleman by the name of Patrick Lencioni, and he wrote a book called Getting Naked. And it isn't what it sounds like, right? But in that book, Getting Naked, it's the idea, this consultancy company that he's with acts as though he's already working with a client. And that's the communication. That's the level of trust. That's the level of information he's giving out in that pursuit of that client. And what I found is, even if they don't become a client, they're going to be one of the best advocates for you, or they're going to come back to you at a later point because they're like, oh my gosh, I couldn't use you at this point, but I was so appreciative of your sales approach, of how you're taking me through this journey and the help you've gave me. I have a loyalty to you, even though I haven't even begun to work with you yet. We've started to see that from the way we're doing things, but that's what I'm trying to drive into this, and making it super easy. So that was a heck of a long monologue there. So feedback on that idea.
No, I love that. I love that. It's, it's the idea of the long game versus, the the short-term game, right? And that's where we get stuck, both be it sales or marketing. Sales, especially with their compensation structures, it doesn't align well. So unless you're showing them that they can, they have opportunities in the pipeline that will help them, be fairly compensated, right? They don't play the long game. They're not your allies for the long game. But marketing, Bryan, I have to say that marketing also, needs to, I don't know what the right percentage is, but needs to spend, most of, its energy and resources to help sales in the short term. But, whether it's 30%, 40% of that for the long term, right? Because that's, yeah, go ahead.
That's where this is where the one funnel approach comes into play, and we have to figure this out, because the short term, now see if this would be the way to do it. Short term is demand generation, the sales doing outbound. Now, again, it's going to have to go to what's your average contract value, what's your lifetime value of your customer, what's your go-to-market maturity, and all that stuff. So there's a lot at play here. So if you as the business owner, you as the founder, you as the lead marketer, lead salesperson, the lead rev ops person, whatever you want to call it, we have to take all of these into consideration, because your marketing sophistication, your sales process, sales methodology, and the sophistication along there has to align with all of that. So there's a lot to it. So let's pretend that was all done. By the way, hardly anybody ever knows that or looks at it that way. So that's another story. But let's pretend all of that was done, right? So at that point, then, my sense is if you're doing an omni-channel approach or unbound approach, right? Let's call it that way, where it's not inbound nor just outbound, it's unbound, of both and. I would think that marketing is warming those things up, where you're starting to build up that nurture pool of candidates, right? Where we're always nurturing these folks. Because let's face it, whenever I'm starting to research, I might be 2, 3, 4 quarters out. And I think that's why you're seeing that only 1% of MQLs are actually closing. Or, it used to be 2% a couple of years ago. Now it's down to 1% of MQLs are actually closing. But when? Is it this current process, the current pursuit campaign? Because nobody has a year-long or 2-year-long pursuit campaign unless if you're selling a super complex, multi-million-dollar, 7 to 11 participants in the buy cycle. No one has that super long sales cycle. It's the opportunity, close lost, nurture, they come back around again for a new opportunity. Unless, again, it's a super long, elongated ERP, multi-million-dollar, super complex process. So that's my belief. You can challenge me on that belief, though. A line there or no?
I think you said, okay, so you're talking about, and I really like before they get to the funnel, right? Before they get to the funnel, going back to what you mentioned about the book, the Getting Naked. It's that's what it was called, right? It's a pity it's not, it's not about what it is. So going back to that, you've got all these potential leads that, they're not leads, so you don't have their email, right? But they're out there, they're outside the funnel, right? Yes. You don't have them in your CRM, and these are the ones that will continue to consume your content, the content you put out there. They're not ready for it now. Maybe they know someone, they'll recommend you. They're diehard fans of you, right? And as soon as they have the need, they will definitely not think twice and come to you, right? So that's outside of the funnel. I feel like I like this idea of nurturing outside of the funnel. No,
I haven't heard of that before. I really like that. So nurturing outside the funnel. So that's your content creation. You're putting value out in the marketplace.
That's what you made me think of. So I just thought like this nurture outside the funnel, right? And then once they're inside, I do believe that I don't remember the stat, whether it's 1%, 2%. You said it was 1%, but let's take a step backward. How many of those marketing qualified leads are actually qualified leads?
Yes.
Right.
Well,
So it's a 1% of not 100%. It's 1% of and whether it's 50%, 40% of those are actually marketing qualified leads. So what are you actually nurturing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would say we're nurturing. Okay, so that's a really good point. So leads in progress, for it to be, in my mind, for it to be a legitimate MQL, if it's a legitimate MQL, then it's an ideal customer profile. So it's a size company that we want to deal with, the right title for that size company, doing that proper job function. And if it's those things, then I would call that a marketing qualified lead. It doesn't have any determination of when they'll actually pull the trigger. It's simply, is it an ideal customer profile? That's the way I'm looking at an MQL, but I don't know if that's too naive or too rigid. Your thoughts on that?
Well, if we think of, and Chris Walker talks a lot about this, the qualified opportunities, right? So you've got these MQLs are here, then much further, you've got the actual qualified opportunities. And what does that mean? Well, it could mean, it generally means that they're ready now, right? That's something that's going to go in your pipeline. But marketing qualified lead, you don't know when they're ready to buy. Precisely. So we're nurturing them the same way, right? When maybe you're in my CRM and I'm treating you the same, I'm giving you the same content, the same emails, the same everything as someone that, is gonna buy 3 months from now.
That's really interesting. So if that's a really good point. So I would put that, if we've not spoken to them yet, I would nurture them in one way. If we've spoken to them, then I'm going to put them in another type of nurture campaign. Or if they've fallen out of the opportunity funnel and they hadn't gone to a closed won or closed lost yet, I'm going to nurture them maybe the same way that I would of somebody that I've spoken to before. And definitely, if there's a closed loss, I'm going to nurture them a little bit higher value content on those ones. So I would look at multiple different nurture campaigns, but those are absolute nurture campaigns along the way, because an MQL would then go to an SQL, a sales qualified lead. So that marketing qualified lead, you're an ICP, right? That's it. You become an SQL to an MQL, or excuse me, an SQL, a sales qualified lead, or a sales accepted lead, whenever you book an exploratory meeting. Whether inbound or outbound, you book an exploratory meeting. That, to me, is that ICP, really at an MQL is the way we do it. And then when you show up, that's an SQL. That's a sales qualified lead, because you've actually shown up to a meeting. Haven't made it into pipeline opportunity yet, but you've made it to that first-time exploratory meeting. To me, that's a sales accepted lead or a sales qualified lead. So let me just pause there. Does that align with the way that you're doing things in your place?
No, definitely. I see this all the time. I would just like to open up the conversation to maybe consider something different. I'm not saying switch things around completely, but just let's just think of the idea of, would it make your job nurturing those sales qualified leads if marketing informed them way before anyone became a marketing qualified lead? It did a lot more educating on the value, did ungated, completely ungated. Did someone, once they got to you, they knew almost 90%, they knew what you could do for them. They just need that. Yeah.
They just need what?
No, they just need that obviously that last touch. It's human to human, to get to know you. What do you think of that?
I like that idea a lot. I mean, that's one of the reasons that we're doing these hyper banter shows. One thing that I told you, Zainab, is that this is kind of ungated content, that this is like, what do they call it? What do they call it? open source, right? This is open source IP for content, right? So we can take this and share it with others, because our belief is this. Our mission is to help communities thrive through socially responsible entrepreneurship, right? Because if we can do that, amen, hallelujah. So we're taking this, creating, my hope is, really good content for others to take and utilize. So this for us is that ungated information, or ungated
Mhm.
content and teaching to others. And then whenever people come in, it's kind of curious. They're like, oh, I really liked how you talked about this, or how you posted this. So that's our one, lead generation side, but two, really our credibility statements. I mean, they're really your credibility pieces, because people will buy from you if they trust you. And people will buy from you if they believe that you can fix their problem. They Right, and too often times I think that we're shoving our features and benefits down everybody's throats, as opposed to, hey, here's a problem that we often see, here's ways to solve it. They're not going to likely be able to solve that even with you telling them how, because there's so much that goes into this, how complex everything is. So even if you give them the answer, they're like, can you help me with that, because I'm not 100% sure how to do it. I tried it, screwed it up, can you help me please?
Yeah. Yeah, no, great point. Again, need to unpack what you just said. No, so much. Every time you grab the mic, you say so many things. Um, just one point about the features. Absolutely, and I think that even when we don't do that, right? When we are not trying to shove, features down, prospects' throats. They're actually surprised, so if we think of the game of attention constantly that we're playing, because it's not, whatever we do, it's not about, getting the sale, it's not about, getting the investment, it's about getting to the next step, right? My co-founder at Pitch Lab, Taryn, talks a lot about that. It's about the next step, right? So the next meeting. So it actually, we're playing this game of attention, and when we don't do what others do, right? Which is, one of the things is shove, features down prospects' throats. They're just surprised, right? So that we get points for that, and I like that.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a huge credibility builder, because if you think about it, we want to be respected, not liked. It's ideal if we're liked, but we want to be more respected than liked. And that respect comes from building trust and being caring enough for the other person to go, you might not like this, but can I challenge you on your thought process here? My fear is you might be off base, but I don't want to upset you. How can I tell you that without making you upset? Right? And having the internal belief system, or the belief structure, to truly help these people, and not just look inwardly at, oh my goodness, I might lose my sale, or might lose the opportunity here if I don't do this, because I think that's how you really build out trust.
Yeah, I was in a room on Mondays. Taryn does a room on the stories that we tell ourselves, right?
Oh, yeah.
For like a sales mindset, right? And that's the main topic. And there's this wonderful lady that shared her experience, and she said, okay, to avoid going down that trap of, what you just explained, I just take, what's the goal? So what's my goal for in terms of revenue? Okay, I look at it, I take it in, and then I detach myself from it, because that's going to help me do what you just said, Bryan, which is, do the best for that person, that customer, and not have, your commission or your numbers at the end of the quarter hanging. So
yeah, I don't know what you call it in the marketing world, but we call it commission breath on the sales side.
yeah,
It is
heard that
really
one. Yeah,
difficult to do. Yep, it's so
yeah.
hard to do. All right, so then we get that MQL, and ideally from this ungated content, we're getting more and more of these MQLs. So that's the inbound, or demand generation from that list that we're calling on, the email, the telephone, whatever, the social that we're reaching out. So proactive lead generation, that's going to give us our MQLs. They actually show up to the exploratory meeting. That's the SQL. And then after that, if they progress from that SQL into pipeline opportunity, that's whenever we now are in sales pipeline. And I think that sales really misses the boat of not inviting or participating with marketing here, where there should really be a coordinated effort. And this might be ubiquitous out there, and I've just not seen it because I'm blind. However, it seems to me that we're missing a huge opportunity to have sales and marketing really work together to continue to drip value content during pipeline opportunities, because it's really still needed, I think, but I might be wrong on this.
I mean, I agree with you. Who am I to say that you are right? Right. All I can say is I agree. And one of the first things we said at the very beginning is the shared, the importance of shared knowledge. There's not enough of that. And it's not about, first of all, the funnel is not necessarily linear, right? So so it's not about, okay, marketing takes the first part of the funnel, and then it's all sales, and then marketing comes back, right, for either the referral or whatever. But it's not about that. It's, we're both working together throughout the funnel. So what can marketing add and to the whole experience, to the whole funnel, and what can marketing get out of learn from sitting on a demo call, for example? Right. So if you think of us giving, and stop me if I'm rambling too much, but if we think of, the whole ungated content at the very beginning, right? Let's say, it's an ungated demo. You can watch what we do for 2 minutes, a very short one, right? So if that's what we're doing, then I want to be at the big demo to see, was that enough? Did they get the right thing? Did they get the wrong idea? What am I showing in those 2 minutes, right? Is it helping compared to the real demo? Can I be showing more? Is that possible? Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. It has to, yeah.
You just really made me think here that maybe we blow up the funnel idea because right, because you said it's not a linear approach. So maybe we're wrong. Maybe it's not a one funnel approach, and there's some type of, maybe it's a parabola or something. I don't know. But it goes back and forth, because if we can, so for example, what are the friction points in all stages of the buyer's journey? Because I really think that what buyers are looking for is, how can I reduce risk? How can I make myself feel good? So ego state, achieve goals, that kind of thing, right? But really they're looking to avoid risk, get out of pain, or feel better, right? A self-fulfillment, sense of self-fulfillment. So if I can determine what the friction points are along the way, and my guess is we know what those are, and we put little value contents along the way, I think that would be critically important. So for example, if we find on discovery call that if we find out on initial conversation to set up the discovery call that they have pain 1 or 2, then why not show a demo, kick over a demo of, here's how we solve problem 1, problem 2, not the whole kit and caboodle, right? Because it's like showing it's like showing your
I got a whole
hey, look, this is whenever I was going up to the door, and this is whenever I open it. Nobody cares. But if I can show, hey, this is how we can quickly and easily solve the problem for you, that's going to likely get them to show up to that meeting so they can learn more. But I think a lot of people would be concerned about, that's giving too much away. So your thought on that? I mean, is that giving too much away, or is that a good use of this content?
It's, in general, it's fear, right? Especially since we move away from volume to from quantity to quality, right? There's this fear that we have to let go of, right? Just think of, a completely different example. Think of your email list, right? So you've got you have CRMs that actually do that automatically, that, take people that are not engaged, have not opened any of your last 10, 11 emails, and they give you the option to remove those from the email that you're sending out, right? Why? Because that improves your deliverability score, right? But from a fear standpoint, you're like, I went from 3,000 to 1,256. Ooh, I want the 3,000, right?
Yeah.
Right. So we have to let go for better quality, right? In general. So yeah, I'm up for letting go. And I'm also always up for testing. Let's test it. Give me, if we can, we talked about, the CEO, the culture of a company, right?
Right.
We need to have the opportunity to say, okay, I'm going to run a test and see how that goes. Sales, are you with me? Right? So we're going to run a test on this. Yeah, sure. Fantastic. Let's run a test and see how it goes.
Wow. Okay. So this wasn't quite as easy as I was expecting here. I thought this was a little bit more hammered out in my brain, but this is a little bit more complicated than what I was expecting. Shoot, that's I guess why no one's doing it yet. Um, okay, so we get into that opportunity stage, and we're doing those different nurturing pieces along the way. Once we get, so I look at that opportunity stage. See if you think I'm completely insane on this one too. I'm looking at that opportunity stage within the sales funnel almost as the same as if you look at a closed one and you have a customer and you're doing what we call strategic account management. And that's going to go into how much time are we going to spend with them? How often are we going to reach out and touch base with them? I would think that within our nurture campaign, so maybe not sales pipeline, but in that nurture campaign, we'd almost want to structure that same thing, meaning if we win this account, how valuable is it going to be? And then if we can sift and sort and segment it, we're going to spend a little bit more time. So marketing is going to give maybe a higher touch of really good, valuable content. Well, maybe stretch that. Everybody's getting the same good, valuable content, but maybe sales is touching out a little bit more frequently or doing a little bit of extra effort. So if we can segment that out in that nurture campaign, maybe there's a couple of different instead of strategic account management, it's strategic account nurture, if you will.
I like that idea. First of all, because it's about, you're talking about, okay, so there's a process that maybe has 10 touch points. I'm making this up, right? How many touch points does sales have, and how many touch points does marketing have? We're working at this together, and there is no one answer for everyone, because it really does depend on what has been done, what the company actually sells, right?
Right.
Who the customers are, what they have done before, right? So it'll vary, but I like that approach. Yeah, the shared, and I guess marketing also there, it has the opportunity to keep learning also,
Yes.
right? So another interview, another prospect interview, and keep learning from a
Yeah,
different point of view.
it's really curious there then too is on the interviewing or marketing to learn, especially with Gong and Chorus, all of those recording. I wonder how much marketing is actually listening to those to hear what the most common questions are, most common objections are, and creating content off of that. I wonder, they're probably doing that already, but that would be a clear, easy way of doing that.
I hope so. I hope so. I mean, if you have Gong, or if I don't know, I'm not familiar with the other one, the other tool, but if you have tools like that and you're not using them, shame on you. But if you don't have tools like that, because obviously they're not available to everyone, right? And it doesn't make sense for an early stage startup to a very early stage startup to have Gong, right? It's just that it wouldn't make sense. But are they actually doing it with the tools that they have, which is Calendly, CRM, Zoom,
Right.
the script, right?
And then even if you look at, I think there's called, what is it called here? There's one out there, fireflies.ai. That's a free tool to leverage that these startups can utilize, and then on a weekly update, right? So if we do a weekly accountability between sales and marketing, how many conversations do we have this week? What was the main tenor of all of those conversations? What came out of this? What worked? What didn't? And if we can get that, here are the common objections, here are the common people that we're running into. And if sales and marketing has more of those conversations, less, weekly ass kickings is what we call it, less whacking the salespeople, you didn't do enough, and more conversations to get quality. I think if we could pull that together, that would help along the way. And then we could build out that strategic nurture campaign as opposed to just throwing out the same stuff to everybody no matter what. So again, I don't know. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, as long as, they have a common goal, and they talk to each other often. So this is what's up. This is what I'm doing. This is what I'm doing. Okay, check. Okay, see you. Talk in a few days, or talk next week, or have a weekly meeting or a bi-weekly meeting. Today, this week, I've listened to 40 calls. You listened to, you were obviously on them,
Right.
60 calls. What jumped out at you? Share that with me, to have like an open channel. Hey, this really surprised me. That really surprised me. What do you think? Because at the end of the day, we started a company, and we have this idea of what we think our client needs, or our prospects need. And soon, if we dig in a little deeper, it's a little more nuanced than all that, right? There's much more color. So make sure that we share the knowledge, I think is super important.
Yeah, and then to stay on the same page, whenever I was doing the prep work for this, I was thinking about the different key performance indicators that might go along the way, right? So how do you measure this? How do we make sure that we're doing this? And I would think for that very top of the funnel, let's call that the total addressable market or the total available market, whatever your language you want to use there. It's what's the list size and what's the quality of it, the validation level of it, right? So I think that's really what we would need to know there. Would you add anything to that very top?
That very, very top, no, as long as, we're working backwards from, the actual revenue that we want to get, and looking at the real conversion rates in each step, and seeing, okay, what does that translate to? Does that mean I need to reach 100,000 people, right, to
Right.
start out with, and then work backwards from there? Okay.
Correct. So what you just put out there is, I put the next tier is that leads in progress. So that's number of contacts worked, right? Because I might have 300 companies, 3 to 5 people within each one of those companies, and I have to touch them 7 times. So that's what a lot of people don't realize, is how many times I need to touch them, or reach out to them just to get them to say hello or reply or anything. So we don't need a huge list because of how many contacts or how many times that we need to hit that. So how many people are being worked, and then how many in each tier of that validation funnel. So we take it as tier 1, never been talked to. We don't even know if the numbers, emails are worked, right? We got them from the list and they're validated off the list, but there's nothing like until you actually try the number and try the email. So where are they in each tier? That's tier 1, non-validated; tier 2, validated, not spoken to; tier 3, spoken to but not booked a meeting; tier 4 is booked a meeting, so that's that marketing qualified lead, and now that's a real legitimate MQL. And then they show up, that's a sales qualified lead, and then they progress to the sales pipeline. Now we're into sales pipeline. So how many in each one of those tiers? And then you go, so what would you add to that leads in progress? Anything that I missed off of that?
Just a quick checkpoint, just because, they booked a meeting doesn't make them necessarily, a good fit to become a sales, a qualified opportunity. So, that's one of the challenges of this approach, because, this is a challenge in the old way of doing it. And, which is why the best way is the long game. I don't mean to bring this up again, but it's the long game. It's making sure that, whoever does come says, I'm ready, Bryan, I'm ready, take my money. No. So that's in an ideal world. No.
Yeah. So do you think that they would? So okay. So let's challenge that a little bit, because I like where you're going. I'd love for somebody to show up right then at that MQL to be, hey, take my money, I'm ready to go, right? I'm in that stage with two other vendors right now, right? And I see on my calendar tomorrow I have a 15-minute discovery call, which is going to be a colossal waste of time, right? What am I going to do in 15 minutes? If I'm ready to buy, just put it on the freaking calendar so we can make some decisions, right? So we do stupid
Mm.
stuff like that because we're trying to do the old way. Now, the curious thing is what you just said there. I just take that as a given, right? That they are ready to go. However, they might be ready to go for that stage, meaning I'm still in understanding, I'm still in collection. So there's
Yeah.
other vendors that I'm at that stage with, right? I'm curious. So I'm an MQL, I'm curious, I'm the right person, but I'm just going to have this conversation and then I'm likely going to buy in Q2, Q3, Q4, whatever the case may be. But if you blow me off today, I'm not going to be a client of yours in a couple of months from now. So that's the
Yeah.
only challenge to that statement that I would
Mm.
bring from a
Mm.
sales perspective, but also as a buyer. I don't know if that's
Mm.
naive on my end or not.
Oh, I mean, to me, it makes perfect sense because, and that's just part of it, because that's just, those that are solution aware. But, the awareness, there's also, problem aware. So there are different types of awareness, right?
Yes.
But you only brought up the case of solution aware, and absolutely. So it just adds a layer of complexity, right? It's not black or white. It's really interesting.
Yeah, son of a gun. I didn't even think about that. So, and that's where, again, if we to really pull off this one marketing approach, there's a lot of ebbs and flows and tiers within this, which is curious because then maybe I'll nurture an awareness versus a solution awareness, those different stages, because I didn't even consider that. Maybe those are different nurture campaigns. So it's number work tiers, which awareness level are they? Then we go into the first time meetings, and then it's how many first time meetings ever versus new projects. So that's whenever we're bringing cross sell, upsell from existing clients, because that's going to be into pipeline opportunities. And then maybe it gets into how many reentries. They were closed lost in the past, and they're re-entried. So I didn't have that originally, but I would think that those would be those three different type: first time ever, new projects from existing, or re-entries from previous closed laws. So what else would we add there?
New projects from existing, you mean upsells, or
Yeah,
those are
exactly. Cross sell,
okay,
upsell.
okay, okay. Yeah, I think if unless since we're talking at the very end of the funnel, you've got the referrals, which are super important, right? Which might, I don't know if you've considered those or not, and at bigger sizes, and so for enterprise, for example, it's much harder to know.
Yeah.
But you can know if you ask, right?
Interesting. So, would you disagree? I would put those referrals or those intros into that leads in progress. Although I have a higher likelihood of bringing that to close maybe a little bit more quickly, I put that at that leads in progress because I still need to go first conversation and bring them down through the buyer's journey. So is that
Interesting.
maybe one
Hmm.
way of looking at it, do you think, or?
But there's really no right or wrong. This is why I love what we're doing, right?
Yeah.
It's just typically when you look at a funnel, right? At the very end, you've got, of course, the sale, you've got the upsell, you've got the the referral, right? In terms of a design, the way we would picture it. But absolutely, that needs to go somewhere else, right? that
Yes.
that that referral is going to probably not go into the awareness stage, right? It's going to be a bit more mid funnel, mofu, right?
Right.
Because they're halfway convinced. So someone has already vouched for your company, so they're halfway convinced. They don't start from the very top. But yeah, I like that.
Okay, and so then it goes into opportunity stage, and I'm looking at total quantity in the opportunity as well as the dollar amount, and then so total quantity per stage of that sales process, and then the dollar amount per process. So I don't think there's um,
Oh,
really cycle of that time. How long is it taken to go through there? And I'm sorry, I cut you off there.
No, the cycle, the cycle is super important because, it really does help you get a frame of reference, right? It's not the same. You could have the dollar amount, the number of leads, but if that's over a period of 3 months, it's not the same as, having it be over a period of 1 month, right? So that just that frame of reference, but also the rate versus, the previous step in the funnel.
Yeah, the
Gives you an idea. Yeah. Like how quickly are you closing, or to what extent, and then you could start comparing, quarters, and maybe even, start thinking, maybe if that conversion rate was lower, then maybe we have to look at what marketing is bringing us, right?
Well,
we have to look backwards.
That's also, I think, where we defriction it. What assets can we give along the pathway? Because if we can start to identify where they keep falling out, we can preemptively attack that, right? Because it's all about fixing the ratios. And if we can fix the ratios, it's insane how if we can fix ratios even a half to 1% at the very top of the funnel, what that means at that bottom of the funnel. So too often, I think that we looked strictly at the pipeline stages and how we can improve those ratios. But really, where the biggest impact that I found is if you can adjust that top of the funnel, that bottom of the funnel is going to be amazingly different, because that half to 1% at the top probably makes it 10 to 15% at the bottom, if not bigger. So.
Okay. Yeah, the drop-offs. Yeah, drop-offs are really important. Yeah. What's the most expensive one?
And then we go, all of those different stages, but then you get to the closed one, and that's going to be revenue and number. But what I think is missing here is that in between the opportunity stage and closed one, though, what do we do with those closed lost? And I would think that those would go back to leads in progress as an MQL or already an SQL. To nurture them in a different way, because I don't think that we oftentimes market lost opportunities maybe as effectively as we otherwise could. But I'm curious as your thoughts there.
Well, they're definitely a learning opportunity, right? Unless it has ended really badly, which is, I don't know if we can swear here, but you can imagine, right? Just.
Yeah, if they're swearing at you, you might not want to nurture them.
Right? You might not want to nurture that. It definitely, there is first of all, on the one hand, the learning opportunity for both marketing and sales, right? What happened? Did we not catch you on time? Did we say the wrong thing? Was it, did we just email you too often? Was the content not right, etc.? Did your budget just change? There's so many aspects of really understanding what actually went wrong. So that's one. In terms of what do we do to nurture them? Hey, these are bigger companies. You don't necessarily have to scale this, right? So you yourself, you were in the call, it didn't close. You probably know what this person needs or not,
Yeah, and that's where if we can put them in a strategic account nurture campaign like we talked about, that would be perfect there. Okay, and then it goes into closed one, so that's the revenue into renewal rates and cross-sell, upsell, and that's going to be a completely different conversation. So, well, that was awesome. So, hey, this has been the Hyper Banter Show with Zineb Layachi, who is super awesome. So, hey, who should reach out to you? How should they do it, and why should they reach out to you?
I mean, I'm, super open to you. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I might not connect with you on LinkedIn if you don't have a photo, but yeah, I spend most of my time on LinkedIn, so happy to connect. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions related to marketing, making videos, making t-shirts also. So happy to, yeah.
Now, and then your name of your company and what you're working on, so people know about that too, please.
Yeah, so I'm a co-founder. First of all, I have my marketing consultancy where I help early stage tech founders talk to their customers, to learn as much as possible for them, from them, to nail their, go to market positioning, messaging, etc., all that, as opposed to, just throwing more money to get more eyeballs, more traffic, and not sitting down to figure out what worked, right? So that's one. Exactly. And but I also co-founded with Taryn Hughes Pitch Slap, where we do private pitch mentoring for tech startup founders, where we basically make sure that good businesses don't go unfunded just because their pitch sucks, and they generally suck. They generally suck, right? We're just not aware of it. So it's a nice, it's a nice touch point to get you a first piece of feedback. So that's that, Bryan.
Zineb, my head hurts because you made me think so hard. Thanks so much for this. I really appreciate it. It's been a ton of fun. So on behalf of the Talent Sales and Scale Show, the Hyper Banter or Hyper Growth Banter about one funnel, marketing, RevOps kind of thing. Thank you. Thank you so much, Zineb. It's been fun.
It's been fun, Bryan. Thank you so much. Love the energy.
Thanks.